In the remote, mist-shrouded mountains of Eastern Europe, there lies a place that time has forgotten. A village that does not appear on any map, whose name is spoken only in whispers by those who dare to remember it. They call it Drozdovo, a name that carries with it a weight of dread and mystery. Drozdovo was once a thriving community, a place where life flourished despite the harshness of the surrounding wilderness. But something happened there, something unspeakable. One night, the entire village vanished, leaving behind empty homes, untouched belongings, and a silence so profound it seemed to swallow the very air. This is the story of the vanishing village, a tale of isolation, mystery, and a darkness that refuses to be forgotten. It is a story that will chill you to the bone, keep you on the edge of your seat, and leave you yearning for more. The story begins with Lena, a young journalist with an insatiable curiosity for the unexplained. Lena had spent years chasing stories of the strange and supernatural, but nothing had prepared her for what she would find in Drozdovo. It all started with an old, yellowed newspaper clipping she discovered in a dusty archive. The article, dated 1952, spoke of a village that had disappeared overnight. There were no explanations, no witnesses, just a haunting photograph of empty streets and abandoned homes. The article ended with a chilling line: Drozdovo is a place where the shadows have a life of their own. Intrigued and determined to uncover the truth, Lena packed her bags and set out for the mountains. The journey was grueling, taking her through winding roads and dense forests where the trees seemed to close in around her. The locals she encountered along the way were reluctant to speak of Drozdovo, their faces pale and their voices hushed. "You don't want to go there," one old man warned her, his eyes darting nervously to the horizon. "Some places are better left forgotten." But Lena was undeterred. After days of travel, she finally reached the edge of the forest where Drozdovo was said to be located. The air grew colder as she stepped into the trees, and an unnatural stillness settled over the landscape. When Lena emerged from a forest, she found herself standing at the edge of Drozdovo. The village was a ghostly sight, its buildings crumbling and overgrown with ivy. The streets were empty, the windows dark and lifeless. A thick fog hung over the village, obscuring the horizon and giving the place an otherworldly feel. Lena began to explore, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The first house she entered was frozen in time. The table was set for a meal, the plates still holding the remnants of food long since rotted away. The beds were made, and personal belongings were scattered about as if the inhabitants had left in a hurry. As she moved from house to house, Lena noticed strange details. In one home, a child's toy lay abandoned on the floor, its paint cracked and faded. In another, a fireplace still held the charred remains of a fire, though no warmth remained. It was as if the entire village had been paused mid-moment, its people plucked from existence without warning. But the most unsettling thing was the fog. It moved in ways that defied nature, swirling and shifting as if alive. The shadows it cast were too dark, too deep, and they seemed to stretch towards Lena as she walked, as if trying to pull her into their depths. As night fell, Lena decided to stay in one of the houses. She lit a fire in the hearth and tried to make herself comfortable, but the silence was oppressive. The whispers began soon after, faint, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Leave while you still can." Lena tried to dismiss the whispers as her imagination, but they grew louder, more insistent. She felt a presence in the room, a cold, malevolent force that watched her from the shadows. Sleep was impossible, and she spent the night huddled by the fire, her heart pounding in her chest. When morning came, the fog was thicker than ever, and the whispers had not ceased. Lena knew she had to uncover the truth about Drozdovo, no matter the cost. Lena's search for answers led her to the village church, a small, crumbling building at the center of Drozdovo. Inside, she found a collection of old journals and documents, their pages brittle with age. The journals told the story of Drozdovo's final days. The village had been a peaceful, close-knit community until a strange illness swept through. The illness caused hallucinations, paranoia, and eventually death. The villagers tried to isolate themselves, but the illness continued to spread. One night, the village elder, Ivan, claimed to have seen a figure in the forest, a tall, shadowy being with glowing eyes. He believed it was the source of the illness and urged the villagers to perform a ritual to banish it. The ritual was conducted, but something went wrong. The next morning, the entire village was gone. As Lena read the journals, she began to experience strange phenomena. The whispers grew louder, more aggressive, and shadows in the church seemed to move on their own. She felt a cold breath on the back of her neck and turned to see a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. The figure was tall and featureless, its form shifting and writhing like smoke. It stepped closer, its presence suffocating, until Lena screamed, and it vanished. Terrified but determined, Lena decided to perform the ritual described in the journals. She gathered the necessary items: a silver dagger, a vial of holy water, and a piece of parchment with the ritual's incantation. That night, Lena returned to the church and began the ritual. The whispers turned into screams, and the shadows coalesced into a monstrous form. The figure from a forest appeared, its eyes burning with malevolence. Lena fought to complete the ritual, her voice trembling as she chanted the ancient words. The figure lunged at her, but she plunged the silver dagger into its chest. The creature let out a deafening roar and disintegrated into smoke. The whispers ceased, and the fog lifted, revealing the first rays of sunlight in decades. Lena collapsed, exhausted but victorious. The story of Lena and Drozdovo ends in mystery. Some say she succeeded in banishing the entity, while others believe she became its latest victim. The village still stands, its secrets buried within its walls, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover them. The whispers continue to echo through the forest, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks in the shadows. In the heart of the American Midwest, there's a small town called Maplewood. At first glance, it seems like any other sleepy town: small houses, white picket fences, and winding streets. But beneath the surface, hidden in the fog that rolls through the streets every evening, lies a mystery that has haunted the town for generations. There's a legend in Maplewood that goes back over 70 years, a story that no one wants to talk about, but everyone knows. They whisper about it in hushed tones at the local diner, where the old-timers sit, never looking you directly in the eye. Some stories are meant to be forgotten, but this one refuses to die. And for anyone who dares to ask, it always ends the same, with a warning: stay away from Maplewood at night. Michael Fields didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or any of that nonsense. A seasoned reporter in his late 20s, Michael had spent his entire career debunking myths. So when he received a tip about a decades-old mystery that still plagued the town of Maplewood, he thought it would make for a good article, a story of intrigue to help his career. But when Michael arrived in Maplewood that evening, something felt off. The small town of Maplewood was quiet. Too quiet. There was an uncomfortable stillness in the air, the kind that made you feel like you were being watched. As Michael checked into the hotel, the receptionist, an older woman with a tired face, gave him a tight-lipped smile. "The rooms are available," she said, "but you're better off leaving before the fog rolls in." Michael chuckled to himself. "I'm not afraid of a little fog." The woman's eyes grew distant, as if she was remembering something she'd rather forget. As night fell, the town seemed to change. The fog rolled in thicker, and the streets emptied, leaving Michael to wander alone through the quiet town. The only sound was the soft crunch of his shoes on the damp pavement. He wandered towards the town's small, historic district, hoping to find some clues for his article. That's when he saw the first strange thing: a woman standing motionless at the far end of the street. Her figure was barely visible through the mist, but she seemed to be staring directly at him. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, her face obscured by the fog, watching him. Michael's got twisted. He called out, but the woman didn't respond. She simply stood, unmoving. After a few moments, he turned to walk away, but when he looked back, she was gone. A chill ran through him. The next day, Michael went to the local library, hoping to uncover more about the strange disappearance that had plagued the town for years. He found a collection of old newspapers, some so brittle with age that they cracked in his hands. As he flipped through them, one story caught his eye. It was about the disappearance of a young girl, Lily Dawson, back in 1948. The article told of how she had vanished from her home one cold autumn night, her parents frantic, searching the town for her until the police were called. Despite an extensive search, Lily was never found. The most chilling part of the article? The last line. The town believes the fog took her. Michael shook his head. It sounded like a local legend, but something about the story wouldn't leave him. He had to know more. That afternoon, Michael met with Jack Harrow, the town's oldest resident. Jack was in his 80s, his face weathered from decades of living in Maplewood. He was the only one who would talk to Michael, though his voice was filled with reluctance. "I remember Lily Dawson," Jack said, his voice trembling slightly. "She was just a little girl, innocent, sweet. But that night, the fog rolled in thick and heavy. The next morning, she was gone. Just gone. No one saw her leave. No one heard anything. Her parents were devastated." Jack paused, his eyes narrowing as if he were trying to remember something he hadn't thought of in years. People say it was the fog, that it takes people, that it's always been that way. And Lily, well, she wasn't the only one. As Michael dug deeper into the town's past, he learned that Lily Dawson wasn't the first person to vanish in Maplewood. Over the years, several people had disappeared in the dead of night, always on foggy nights, and always without a trace. Some believed the fog itself was to blame, a strange, unnatural mist that seemed to rise out of the ground on certain nights, swallowing everything in its path. People would be walking home, and the next morning, they'd simply be gone. The town's older residents spoke of the fog like it was a living thing, something that could reach out and take whoever it chose. As night fell again, Michael stood on the same street where he had seen the strange woman. The fog was rolling in again, thicker than before, and the temperature dropped with it. His breath came out in small clouds, and for the first time, he felt a pang of fear, something he hadn't expected. He felt it, the presence, the eyes of something unseen watching him. Michael turned around quickly, but no one was there. Still, the feeling remained, as if the fog itself were creeping closer, tightening around him. Michael's heart raced as he made his way back to the hotel. The fog felt like it was closing in on him, wrapping itself around him. Every step he took felt heavier, as though something unseen was tugging at his heels. As he reached the door of the hotel, he glanced back one last time. A figure stood at the edge of the fog. It was her again, the woman, but this time she was closer. Michael's hand shook as he fumbled for the key. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. The woman, the fog, the strange disappearances, all of it swirled in his mind. The stories weren't just myths, he realized. They were warnings. The next morning, when Michael went to check out of the hotel, the receptionist was gone. Only a note remained on the counter. "Leave before the fog takes you too." Some mysteries are meant to stay unsolved. Some places are better left undisturbed. And Maplewood will always keep its secrets. But Michael Fields, he left Maplewood. No one ever saw him again.